Okay, here we go. I wanted to do another live stream talking about the haplogroup designations. I think I'm going to have to realign and reassign some of the designations. Everyone's going to retain their letter designation. It's just that they're just going to be in different places, some of them. So let's go to the Grok, because I went and I asked Grok. I said, "Well, about the SNP markers." So I'm dealing directly with the SNP markers now. So let me go to the Grok here, and I said, well, I said a couple of things, but the last thing I said was Nimrod's younger brothers are A and B, and his younger cousins are E and D. Okay, so Grok says you're refining Ham's lineage. Nimrod C has younger brothers A, Cush, and B, Cush, descendants of Cush, and younger cousins E, Phut, Canaan, and Mizraim, and D, Sellites, or those are the Shemites. I mean, not the Shemites, the Sinites. Grok calls them Sellites. I guess that's a thing. But with IJ Arphaxad as the root. So, because I asked Grok, I said, well, which one works better? Does it work better for Japheth to be the root or Shem's oldest son, Arphaxad? And it said, well, Arphaxad would be better than going with Japheth as the oldest son. But that's because of the order of SNPs. Anyways, so we have this IJ Arphaxad is solid because of the Cohen modal haplotype. We know this is Arphaxad because of the Cohen modal haplotype. And I'm saying the IJK M256 and F M89 are equally old in IJ. Yeah, with the exception of a year or two or whatever. So they're the same. Yeah, they have a common ancestor, obviously. With M256 lost to younger Semitic sons F, G, and H, and shared with K, Japheth, while Ham CF 168, these are the SNP markers now, is distinct, aligning with your historical framework, Genesis 16 grandsons. Except that Nimrod's a great-grandson. Let's test this genetically and historically, integrating Nimrod's family order. Okay, so it's basically all the same, except that the change that I'm making is that now Arphaxad is the oldest, and then I'm jumping to Aram and Lud as being the next in line. That way these are rare mutations. If they're the younger, then these are rare. In other words, to lose an SNP marker is very rare. So we want as few of them as possible, unless the rarity just doesn't matter and they're just there anyways. But so far, I don't know about the order. If anybody wants to contribute and help me as to the order of the sons of Shem, that would be good. And we can go with that instead of the SNP markers, the order of the SNP markers, because we're already losing one. We're already losing one to the younger generations here, and that's the M526 SNP marker of IJ. The younger sons don't have it. None of these younger sons have that marker. So Aram doesn't have it, Lud doesn't have it, Asher, Elam doesn't have it. But if I invert this order here, then it's not so rough in regard to the SNP markers, because then it's in order again. From Aaron to Elam is in order. But Elam would be the younger, Aram and Lud of Lydia would be the older ones after Arphaxad, because Arphaxad has the marker that he shares with his uncle, which is the IJK, which is this one here, the IJK marker. But the younger sons don't share it, so they had to have been lost. But you don't want to lose everyone unless you know for sure that the order is Arphaxad, Elam, Asher, Lud, Aram, and Aram. So that way, Arphaxad is definitely IJ, and he's definitely the oldest one. And we can go with the SNP markers for the rest of them: Aram, Lud, Asher, Elam. So that's the change. They're not changing their letters. The letters aren't changing. Just the order of birth is changing. Okay. Japheth K, elemental PQR SNT. Ham is the younger, per Genesis 9:24. Cush is the oldest son. Nimrod is probably the oldest son that was born out of the four. We're supposed to be four here, right? Four sons of Ham. Phut, Canaan, Mizraim. Yeah. So Nimrod is the oldest. Being the oldest, he can share the CF marker with the Semitic population. But I think the CF marker actually means CT. It's confusing. They don't really explain it very well. But usually the CF marker is C and F and K. But anyways, I don't know if Grok has that straight or not here. So Nimrod's the oldest. A's the younger brother, born in Africa. B's younger brother, born in Africa. They all lose that marker. Phut in Libya or North Africa. Canaan in the land of Canaan. E2, the Levant. D Sinaites, the younger cousin, Andaman to Altai. Mizraim, the younger cousin, Egypt. So the standard tree is AB, BT, CT. I guess. I thought it was AT. But apparently it's A, BT, and CT, meaning this marker here, this BT marker, the entire world shares it with the exception of A. This CT is Nimrod, and the entire world shares this marker with the exception of A and B. And there's a CF marker here. The CF marker, Nimrod shares with the rest of the world, but it's XDE. So this marker here, M186, A doesn't have it, B doesn't have it, C doesn't have it, neither do D and E have it. Only Nimrod, the oldest one, carries this marker M168. Okay, then there's the F and the IJ again. And the DE is M174. So we have to get these designation as much in agreement as much as possible with the markers, because the markers don't lie, but they can be gained or lost. But losing a marker is rare. So we don't want a whole bunch of markers being lost, like Aram and Lud and Asher. To have to say that they lose a marker every time is a little bit rough. So for the time being, until we know better, we're just going to invert it and say after IJ, Aram and Lud are the older ones, and Asher and Elam are the younger ones, according to the SNP markers. K, Japheth Tubal shares IJK with IJ. So he shares the 256, M256 with IJ. So, and then he has his own designation, which is M9. So K is M9. And then the K element, LP, Q, R, S, and T, they all branch out after K. Not from K, but after K, because they have the same common ancestor, obviously. Which a lot of the scientists confuse, because they want to have one producing the other, but it's not one producing the other. It's that they share a marker because they have the same common ancestor. And they're not producing one from the other necessarily. Even though like A and B produces C, or AB produces C, but if they're brothers and cousins, they have a common ancestor. Okay, so here's a scenario here. Nimrod C M130 keeps the CF marker. So this is unique only to Nimrod, the M130. And he keeps the CF marker, which is the M168, which everyone shares except for DE and AB. And he loses the M89 unique to Aram and Lod, and he loses he doesn't have, right, he lost his Cush, or somebody lost the M89 of Lud, and they lost the M256 of IJK. Okay. So A00 Cush loses IJK, Aram and Lud, and the CF marker. And Nimrod's CF marker, which is shared by Nimrod and the rest of the world, that's non-Hamitic world. So they're trying to use this marker to say that C produced the rest of the world, that C branched off from, or C is the branch that the rest of the world branched off of. But we know that Nimrod didn't produce Shem, didn't produce Japheth. They have a common ancestor, which is possible. And it's possible that Cush loses the markers of Nimrod, that Nimrod has, and the Sellites as well. The DE loses them as well. So the DE loses them, the AB loses them. Of course, the E is E1, E2, and E3. That's Phut, Canaan, Mizraim. They all lose these three markers. So it's basically all the same with it. The only change here, again, is that instead of IJ being the oldest, Arphaxad being the oldest, and going and Elam being the next in line, we're going to, for the time being, have Aram and Lud next in line in accordance with the order of the SNP markers. So it's not, unless we know for sure the birth order that the SNP markers, what is normally occurs is that they gain markers instead of losing a marker. So with each one of these, they gain a marker. So this is interesting here. In the the Simmons Genome Project, they have F, and then they have F2. And these are the markers for F and F2s, M89, M427. So there are two different markers for two different lineages. And they're saying they lose. No, they're gaining. They gain the marker instead of losing them. The only one losing the marker is the IJ. Aram and Lud, they don't have to lose markers. They're now gaining markers in the regular, according to the SNP marker. So I gotta double check that with Grok. They're not supposed to be losing the marker. Well, they do lose. As a matter of fact, they do lose the IJK marker. Yeah. In other words, the only marker that's lost is the IJK marker of M256. Sometimes it's hard to understand what Grog's saying, but yeah, that's correct. The only marker that's lost is the IJ marker of Arphaxad. So they lose the M526, 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 but they keep their own markers. M89. Anyways. All right. And then the rest of K is K element OPQ, RS&T in accordance with the SNP markers being gained, identifying each additional lineage. So that's about it, I guess. I have to read through this, make sure I understand it, what's going on. Okay, E is Phut, Canaan, and Mizraim, Libya, Levant, and Egypt. And of course, Cush is Ethiopia. Cush is Ethiopia. Okay, IJ is the oldest. Hebrew root. IJK. Perfect order. Okay, does it fit better? Let's see, history. Shem's primacy to K. Grok seems to think it fits better. Following aligns with Genesis. Ham ABD following aligns with Genesis. Phut strongest yet. Nimrod's elder status C and Ham's younger branches A, B, D, and E. Refine your 16 grandson's timeline. Genetics 526. Both in IJ ignores the M89 steps. Ignores the M89 to M526 steps. In other words, right, the IJ is the only one that ignores the steps. Not all SNPs suggest equal age bending observed order. IJ to F reverses. Okay. This is the only marker that's lost. And then you go back, it reverts back to the order. M89 to M256. See, Ham C. Okay. Fits, though K's challenge exclusivity. Yeah, well, this is already lost to everyone else going from right to left. This is the IJK marker. It's lost to everyone after Arphaxad going right to left. Okay, the Phut is Lud predating the IJK marker is data driven. IJ with both at root relies on untracked SNPs and a loss of the marker. With IJ at the root. Both. IJ is just one lineage. It says both at root relies on untracked. Yeah, they're going to have to uncover additional SNP markers to substantiate this. But there has to be a loss because Arphaxad has to be the oldest one, but it's a very rare mutation to lose a marker that you have. Conclusion, IJ Arphaxad as root with the M526 IJK marker and the M89F equally old. Yeah, relatively speaking, equally old because one is older than the other, but not by hundreds or millions of years. Okay, passing this to F, right. In other words, IJ has the M86 first, and then it's passed to F. And this IJK marker is lost to the F, G, and H, to Aram, Lud, Asher, and Elam. Fits your history. IJ's Hebrew primacy, IJK shared with K, Ham's Nimrod, leading AB brothers. So Nimrod is older than A and B and older than D and E, the cousins, in the 16 grandsons framework. Okay. As old as in IJ dismisses the SNP steps only for this marker. So only this marker is dismissing the SNP steps. In other words, only this marker was lost to the later generations. Like this is Nimrod's. Yeah. And IJ to F inverts this, requiring loss or redefinition. Only one loss. It's your best historical fit, integrating Nimrod's order, outshining F root. But A to IJ remains standard unless SNP counts are fully rejected. Unless the SNP marker, unless this one was lost, this one here, the IJK marker has to be lost instead of gained. If that's the root. If the IJK marker is going to be the root, I mean the IJ, then this IJK marker has to be lost. But that's the only one being lost, except when you go back onto Nimrod. Then Nimrod's SNP marker is lost to his younger brothers and cousins. That's twice that it happens. But of course, they're searching and searching and searching because these markers can't be anyone else. H can only be Elam. IJ can only be Arphaxad. And A through E can only be the descendants of Ham. So it has to work, that has to be that way. And probably when they find more additional SNP markers, it'll probably support IJ as being the root. Either IJ or IJK. I don't think it makes a big difference. But Grok seemed to think it made a difference. But that's good. That's all for now. Looks like I got to get going. Good morning. Rebuke and reprove. Good morning. Yeah, put that up there. So that's about it, I think. And so I will be signing off. God bless everybody. Take care. And stay with the truth. Stay with the truth of the Bible, because it's the only true teaching there is, only factual teaching that there is. And if somebody wants to be a scientist, they have to learn ancient human history before they try to be a scientist. That way, they won't be making absurd statements and things, because evolution is so absurd. It's just so absurd. It relies entirely on mistakes that are being selected for. All right, so God bless everybody. Take care.